Hello everybody and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. I am so excited to bring you this update because Bitcoin is breaking out and getting ready for that move into new all-time highs that we've been talking a lot about. And now I wanted to talk a little bit about why I think that this next move coming is about to be the most profitable one that we're going to see. Inside of every beginning cycle, we always make the biggest breakout right when we get past those all-time highs. So for today's video, we're going to be taking a look at every single one of our prior cycles, taking a look at what happened immediately into price discovery, and applying it to what we're seeing today because I really think that we're all about to make a lot of money very soon. If you guys find any value in this video, please do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. And if you do ever want to see how I'm investing my portfolio long term, links are in the description to go ahead and sign up on my website. Right off the bat, guys, we're going to get in here, talk about every single one of these cycles because as we're getting ready and closer to price discovery, I really believe that we're about to see a very big breakout coming inside of Bitcoin. The fact that Bitcoin has just been consolidating at these prior all-time highs, in my opinion, is ultimately telling us we're about to see that big move coming very soon. And it's just a little bit of consolidation before we get that big upward expansion. We can see that in every one of our cycles, we followed a very similar type of movement where after our cycle low, we start this slow kind of accumulation phase where we go through our first higher highs and higher lows of the new cycle. And then it's always right around that Bitcoin halving that we start to see us distance ourselves from this trend. So this would have been over here at like the end of November that our Bitcoin halving came in. And then we can see price immediately went into price discovery. Now, if we notice, this was the first move that we saw in that cycle of 2013 and 2012. We saw this massive breakout and Bitcoin went from basically $12, $13, all the way to $265. So we can tell that this was a much bigger move in comparison to what we've been accustomed to seeing. But you got to keep in mind that Bitcoin's market cap was worth like $20 million at the time. Didn't have very much money in it as a whole. And then we see that we got this correction and then we went even into a bigger blow off top to finish out that cycle. And now we can come over here and look at a lot of the same things. This is going to be taking us into that 2016 and 2017 cycle, and we can see that we get our cycle top over here at about $1,100 we did a lot of the same price action as far as just higher highs, higher lows, building a base and a foundation as we're getting into that next cycle. The only difference is this one just took more time to do that. However, we can see once we got that leg up into price discovery that started right here, we had a couple different retests at that prior all-time high level, but once we got the breakout here, Bitcoin went from $900 all the way up to $3,000 in one big move. So this would have been that first breakout that we ended up seeing going into price discovery. And that's why I say that we could very easily see this next move coming for Bitcoin being a big breakout because, you know, historically speaking, that's been the case every time. In 2017, we got that retest and then we ended up just going up even higher, much higher, into our true cycle top. So we can see that it's really that first breakout that starts that trend, and then we get a much bigger move that comes after. Now, a lot of people have pretty much written off the potential that this next cycle is going to be very big, and it's really just because when we look at our last cycle in comparison to those other two, we can see that our cycle top occurred, and it wasn't nearly as parabolic as what we saw in the last couple cycles. But what I will argue is from the point of us actually breaking out of that all-time high and going into price discovery, we saw a pretty big move. You know, we went from 18,500 all the way up to 42,000 before any type of a pullback. And it was a lot, you know, along those same lines as what we saw in 2017, where we kind of just got that first big breakout up to 3K, and then we saw that pullback before going up higher. The only difference is 2017 had a much bigger blow off top in comparison. You know, the last cycle had a lot going against it, I would argue. You know, we had a lot of over leveraged players, which obviously got shaken out in the bear market, between FTX, between Celsius, between Voyager, many of these other projects. However, what we ended up seeing was the cycle top occurred at a much lower point. We didn't see the same blow off top type of price discovery. What we were expecting to see was this move into 69,000 that peaked at the end of the year. We were expecting this one to go to at least up to 100,000 and make this big glorious move similar to what it did in 2017. We just didn't have the buy support to get it. I think a lot of that was because of the pandemic. So we can see that, you know, nonetheless, when we first broke those all-time highs, it was still a very big move. There was still a lot of profit that was secured throughout this entire run. And that was when DeFi summer took off. That's when NFTs started to take off. And there was a lot of those different narratives that were playing out, like Uniswap even with their airdrop. Coming into our current cycle today, we've been consolidating right here at these prior all-time high levels. I've updated you guys consistently with the $69,000 target, and as you guys can tell, we're currently just hitting $71,000, and Bitcoin is looking like it's convincingly going to be going into price discovery. So I shared with you guys those prior charts because as it stands, we're right at that same point in trajectory for Bitcoin, where historically speaking, when we're looking at where the price is before we go into that first move into price discovery, I think that with Bitcoin just mainly consolidating right here for the last couple months like it has been, that's a very bullish sign, because what it says is, hey, we took a little bit more time to cool off. We did take a little bit of time to reconsolidate, build up a little bit more of a foundation of buyers. But now that we're starting to get that next leg up, I think that this thing is going to absolutely send it. And most likely we're going to be heading to 100K in the short term. I've always updated you guys consistently saying that we would probably be running up to about 90 to 100K before any type of a pullback. And I still think that that's probably going to be likely. 100K is on par with what we've seen in prior cycles, maybe even a little bit less. This thing could really start running, because you guys got to remember, all of these pullbacks up to this point have been small. Our dips have been very small, and the impulses to the upside have been quick and sudden. We haven't seen the same sort of consistencies in the beginning of this cycle. We saw Bitcoin starting to bottom even in the summer of 2022. July, we spent all of this time consolidating here. And when the FTX collapse happened, Bitcoin was really one of the only things that made that lower low. Some of the top altcoins never did, like Ethereum. Ethereum held its June low. So what we saw was people were more willing to jump into these cycles and accumulate earlier into the bear market trend than they were, historically speaking, when we're looking at Bitcoin dumping straight into the end of the year, following your normal 4-year cycle. People weren't as willing to accumulate in the prior cycles as they were in this one. And that's why we didn't see the same type of, bigger capitulation across the board on the market. And then not only that, but when the market bottomed, we instantly recaptured that prior level at 25K, consolidated on top of it as support for a few months, and then we got an even bigger move into price discovery. So the ETF gets approved, the dip happens, it's a teeny tiny dip, we instantly go up into price discovery, and now this has been the biggest consolidation that we've had since 25K all the way back down in here when we first started this new trend. And I think that this is ultimately going to give us a pretty big move coming into price discovery. In a similar way that both of these last two moves were pretty big, you guys got to keep in mind that now we have the ETF approved. We have institutions that are already buying Bitcoin every single day. So if these people are already positioned, they're going to need that exit liquidity. We always see retail come into the market the second that Bitcoin gets into price discovery. That's when you're going to see all the media attention, which we've already kind of seen. Meme coins have been blowing up. We've already seen a lot more euphoria type of market positioning than ever before. We haven't even technically gone into price discovery yet. I wouldn't consider this real price discovery because we rejected off of these prior all-time highs. But now is going to be that first move. And this is going to be where we always talk about seeing the most profit in the altcoins. Now, I'm not saying that altcoins are instantly going to see the most profit on this first leg up. I won't be surprised to see Bitcoin actually outperform, which is why we need to come over and actually look at the altcoins, because I think that this is going to be a very, very important chart. When we're trying to factor in, Bitcoin and the altcoin markets, anytime Bitcoin goes into a new all-time high, we need to understand how that's going to influence the altcoin markets, because the altcoins themselves are going to end up just following Bitcoin. They're just going to lag a little bit. Now we're going to come over here. We're going to come all the way to this first cycle for those altcoins, which is going to be back down in here from 2016 to 2017. So we can see that in these time frames, once Bitcoin, if I draw a line at its prior all-time high, if we look at where the altcoins were at that same moment of time, altcoins were right here. So you can't see the prior all-time high, but the altcoins were just a little bit below theirs. They were a lot more on par with Bitcoin's price trajectory back here in 2016. But it was in that same move that both of them went into price discovery, right? When Bitcoin went into price discovery, all of the altcoins did the same thing. Now, if we get into our last cycle, this is where things got a little bit different. The altcoins lagged, right? Bitcoin got to its all-time high right over in this period, right over in here, and we can see the altcoins were right here. They had just flipped their bear market accumulation range, which I'm actually going to drag this little box over so it's easier to see. They had just broken out of this accumulation, because notice we spent like 600, 700 days accumulating in this big double bottom formation, and then the second that we made our first breakout above that range, it took place right here. We consolidated on it. We're unable to ever break below. That was a confirmed breakout, support and resistance flip. And then it was once we made our next higher high, even above that, that was where Bitcoin started making new all-time highs. So the altcoins, they didn't get up to making a new all-time high until over in this period. And we're looking at Bitcoin having already run from $18,000 all the way to $42,000. It had its pullback, right? This pullback, and altcoins are still below those prior all-time highs. And then it was when Bitcoin actually went into this move right here, the very tail end of its 65K top. That was when the altcoins finally made this. Well, it was actually right here. That was when the altcoins made their entire move into price discovery. So we can see that it was really at the tail end of Bitcoin's move that the altcoins took off. And, the altcoins obviously went for one more new all-time high at the same time that Bitcoin did at 69,000 here, but it wasn't very big. When we're coming in here and looking at this current cycle, it makes me excited because we're seeing a quicker pace than ever before. We're seeing fundamental drivers of value this cycle, which we just haven't really had in prior cycles between the ETFs. I think there's more ETFs coming for these altcoins. And we can see that, Bitcoin is right there on that price discovery move. It's just about to go into price discovery. We can see that the altcoins are still below those prior all-time highs, but they're not below them that much. I think that with Ethereum having this approval, Ethereum's going to steal a little bit of attention, and we're going to start to see that chart bottom a little bit. But I think that in the short term, Bitcoin making this first breakout, maybe we run to 90K, maybe we run to 100K, that's probably going to be where, altcoins are going to start breaking out of their downtrends against Bitcoin. Some of them are going to capitulate at that time. Bitcoin might outperform the vast majority of the altcoins in that first leg up because historically speaking, it always has. We've historically seen Bitcoin, once it makes that first breakout and maybe even after that pullback and we start going up again, that's really where the outperformance of the altcoins comes in. So we can't be too over ahead of ourselves in this first leg up, just assuming that if altcoins don't immediately start outperforming Bitcoin that they're over, because I don't think that that's the case either. We can come over and look at a number of different charts here, and really the Bitcoin dominance is going to be the most important one. And when we're looking at this one, I still think there's a very real potential where we go for one more high up here to 58% dominance before we get that true top. I've talked a lot about how we have massive bearish divergence forming in here between higher highs in price and lower highs and lower lows on the RSI. The difference is I think that we're going to get one more reaction to this, drag up here a little bit tighter, and then we're going to reject once more and give us kind of our final sort of bull trap before that reversal takes place. So I think that we've got one more leg up, and it's lining up with, Bitcoin ultimately outperforming things on this move. Historically speaking, it's that first leg up into price discovery. Bitcoin's going to outperform altcoins, and then after that, the altcoins are going to play catch up. So if we're looking at Bitcoin dominance, roughly doing a lot of those same similarities, don't be surprised if this ends up dragging up for one more high in this next leg up for Bitcoin. But I do think that this is going to be that first altcoin cycle since the 2017 bull market where this is going to be falling into a new all-time low. This is going to be a massive drop, guys, because we could see Bitcoin dominance drop all the way to like 25 and maybe even 15% dominance. But I'm just going to say 25 to 20%, 20, 25. That's going to be a really good target. And look how big of a drop that is when we're on the log scale. Like I've stated consistently, this entire consolidation is just one big descending triangle. We have a descending resistance up here. Every single one of the cycles has produced a top at this resistance. And our horizontal support, has just maintained the trajectory throughout this entire time. So once we break down from that, we'll probably see a bounce off that level or something. Could be a decent sized bounce. But regardless, once we see a move past that level, this is where the biggest altcoin cycle of all time starts. Don't get me wrong. This cycle for our last one was really profitable. We saw NFTs, we saw DeFi summer, we saw, a lot of different things blowing up, DEXs, launch pads, whatever, you name it. A lot of things blew up in that time. But if you were here throughout the entirety of 2016, 2017, you know how much smaller that last cycle was in comparison. This was chump change in comparison to this one. So what we would be expecting to see in this cycle, assuming we fall to a new all-time low, we're going to have the entirety of our last cycle just for us to come back down and retest the support. That's already going to be almost the same size as our last cycle, right? So we'll get our last cycle in one go just at the retest of this support. When we break down from this descending triangle, because you guys got to keep in mind, this thing has been forming since basically 2016. So, you know, you're looking at like 3,000 days approximately worth of this descending triangle. But if we go from our peak low, you know, we're looking at like 2,600 days. So this thing is going to have an absolutely massive capitulation. And when it drops and breaks down from our main support and makes a new all-time low, I think that that's really where the peak euphoria of whatever altcoin profits we're going to get are going to come. So when I'm looking at the bigger picture of the cycles, guys, I'm really, really optimistic. You already know that I've been all in. I couldn't be more all in. I've been, you know, preaching why this market cycle is bullish, why we're about to see a big move coming, and all of the charts are lining up with this. It doesn't matter what we're looking at on the long-term basis of the Bitcoin dominance. We're in a massive bearish consolidation pattern that, in my opinion, is going to be breaking bearish. When we're looking at all of their altcoin cycles, we know that historically speaking, you know, Bitcoin might outperform in this first leg up, but we're right at that threshold when the altcoins are going to start running. I think that we're almost the exact same trajectory as the last cycle for the altcoins. Remember how the altcoins had just broken out of their bear market and then they had just made one more high above that and retested it? That was when Bitcoin started going into price discovery. So we were way below those prior all-time highs and we lagged a little bit in the cycle. Where we're at today is a lot of the same trajectory where we've broken out of the bear market bottom in the same ways that we did over in here. We've retested it and now we've made another high above that. And so we're literally just right here all over again. Like there really isn't any sort of a difference. Maybe we're a little bit higher in price because of the outperformance of Bitcoin that's dragged us up a little bit higher with it. But for the most part, guys, there's not any difference between each of these cycles. So if we're looking at all of these lining up in the same correlations, don't fade this. Don't be bearish. Get your long-term holdings. Don't listen to people that are trying to convince you to sell because these people aren't going to make as much money as the people that hold. I'm telling you as somebody who's bought many of the top performing altcoins of each and every one of these cycles and made the mistake of selling them too early. This is the cycle I'm not doing that. And I've been very adamant about telling you guys that as long as we're consolidating around these prior all-time highs, because we have the institutional demand, because we're about to have retail demand, this is the cycle you just want to be holding your bags. You don't want to be getting worried about, oh my God, a 20% pullback. I got to rush to the freaking exit and sell my whole stack for cash because I'm scared. No, don't make those mistakes. Those are going to be the people that cost you the most money. The people that make the most are going to be the ones that simply can just hold the length of the trend. We're right where we need to be, guys. We have our positions ready. We have our bags packed. We like the fundamentally strong coin that we have hunches about. Now all we got to do is let Bitcoin do its thing, go into price discovery, pull the altcoins up with it, and once this market cycle tops in the Bitcoin dominance, I swear to God, guys, you're going to make so much money, and you're going to be really sad if you sell anything too early because this is the bigger picture unfolding, and I want you guys to be aware of that. So if you did find value in this video, please do me a favor, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. If you guys do want to see how I'm investing my portfolio as we get this big breakout, I'm telling you guys there's a lot of profit to be made, a lot of good altcoin signals in my group if you want to follow along with them as we realize a lot of these gains into this next leg up. Links are in the description to go ahead and sign up on my website. Thank you guys so much for the support. And with that being said, I will see you guys in the next one. As always, peace out.